Good afternoon. We call the right. Sorry. To make a motion for secretary function.
Motion.
And do you know who that will be?
Excellent.
Okay, so it is the motion to, yes, Cosmic as the secretary function. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, first order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from January 16th. Everybody have an opportunity to review it? Okay. Get a motion.
Motion.
Second.
The moving property second that we approve the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Don, you're up with the treasurers and cash disbursements report.
Okay. Let's start with the disbursements on the month. Sum total of $179,299.96. Itemized as follows. So we had 91,500 paid out to High Rock Contracting this month, and that was all for stabilization work done at 169 Roycroft. And the Aaron Sheriff has walked it.
That's my apologies.
Over disbursement.
Great.
We had a $38,000 payment to Lenmar for stabilization work at 72.5. More stabilization work at 131 York. This was done by Rosario Home Improvements for $48,000. And then we had an invoice to North Coast Property Associates for property management services of $415. RGZ payment of $489.96 for 88 Rosemary. And then various invoice payments to EMS systems totaling $895. The bulk of that is a system installation at the York Street property, but also some monitoring expenses for 88 Rosemary. Moving over to the treasurer's report. Some revenue on the month, just over $284,000. So that was comprised of 3 months of interest payments that were recorded this month, but comprised December, January, and February. And then 2 reimbursements from the city for properties taken at foreclosure, as well as 100. So let's see, the bulk of this is 160,000 in LBI phase 2 funds distributed to us this month. Expenses are the same as discussed on the disbursement fee. Any questions?
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you. My apologies for being late, and your former chairperson Miller has some regards and apologies for keeping. I think I was wondering most of the talking. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is resolution number 4, approving our annual membership in the broadband system.
So this is our annual request to have funding for the New York State Land Bank Association membership. We put down bullet pointed kind of the points of benefit for the land bank to be part of this. You know, they do really advocate for the land bank on the state level. They provide a lot of legal guidance. They have monthly calls and more frequently than that, and as well as also technical assistance and training for. And it's a big part of keeping the land banks whole and relevant and being funded from the state's budget processing. Hoping that continues, and we continue to get some support there. magnificent. It's a $2 million, 2,000. They're having a sale, it's not even only $2,000 annual membership. And it's extremely good.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm so sorry, I could have asked a question. Can others actually attend one of the Land Bank Association meetings? Other land bank.
So they have switched to a meeting schedule and is with technical assistance on the office. No, but at any time.
Be interested in the- what do they have to say?
So, and I'm sorry to interject here. So I connected with Andrew just now. So I'm filling in for Andrew today. He's on vacation. So with Jen filling in for James, we're gonna have to look into whether there's any, since it's an ex officio position, to look into if there's anything that needs to be done to have a proxy sent over. So for today's meeting, we would just, it'd be preferable for Jen not to vote on things while we sort that out. Since I didn't know until we were at the meeting, so sorry, I can't answer it on the spot. I just want to make sure it's done right.
That makes sense. If we have a quorum without.
Yes, so if we could just also go back and vote on the minutes. Yeah,
The minutes and the resolution.
yeah.
Okay, so, revisiting the minutes, that you have already reviewed before, I'll make a new motion. Okay, we have. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, so the minutes are good, and we need to revisit the resolution. Okay, so, resolution number 4, authorizing membership in land bank, do we have a motion? Or no, land bank association?
2,000, not 2 million.
Sorry,
$2,000. Oh, yeah, it's in the amount of $2,000.
You're the treasurer.
Good lobbying.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Oh, all right, thank you. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, acting council.
Glad I
Well,
could
welcome to
contribute.
the land bank.
Yes, thank you. And sorry we didn't have that squared away before the meeting.
Okay, I literally panic called Eric at noon today to be like, is there anything that I should know for this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll surf up with Andrew. We'll make sure everything's worked out.
Okay, well, thanks. That brings us to our discussion items. We have a few things to talk about. First one on the list, annual report to council. Report back. Yeah, I read like a champ. No, I thought it was good. Thank you to the land bank staff for helping me with talking points, and so it was well received. We did have a few questions that we follow up on.
I got outstanding questions this afternoon, but I couldn't tell you. I can open.
So, okay, great. Well, we'll look forward to any additional questions that see on those, but one question was honestly, I vaguely recall this one was a question about the trumpet. So I know that was handled by Corporation Council. There was a question about a request to provide, there were questions about the board makeup. So we would provide the roster. There was a question about guidelines for window replacement. Policies related to window replacement. There was a request by Council Member Gruber that our strategic plan consultant engage with council directly during development of the plan, so that was noted. And I have one other here that there was a question or request from Councilmember Melendez related to the AHOP program, or AHOP project. But I don't think was captured.
No, was not in the, was that in the written questions that were posed? I don't recall that.
I believe he said fine to provide in writing, but was looking for information on that.
I don't recall, but trust your memories better.
I don't know about that. So we'll have to, but that, so there was interest in. Thanks to go. Fairly quickly, it's really, see a lot of support for your work that Mike does.
Would they have that from that?
The history, right, of what happened there. And I believe one of the council members referred to a workaround or something to that effect, which there is not.
So they know we did.
That is correct. Anything else? Any observations, thoughts?
No, I thought it was really well. It was very brief. We don't have a lot of time.
I was instructed to keep it to 5 minutes or less.
Really? Yeah, you did a
And I
good job.
did, I
You a
did.
really good job with it. Nice and concise.
Right at a dizzying pace, considering that we used to do these presentations over the course of an hour.
Oh, at least.
Yeah, when you were telling me that, I'm very thankful that I was not chairperson at that time. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't want to give short shrift to, right? Does, but putting all of that to 4 minutes and 38 seconds.
Yeah,
Did I sound a bit like the micro machines guy? Do you remember the micro machines guy?
I do, but you didn't.
Thank
I
you.
thought it was
Okay.
short, concise, but very informative.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes. Okay, well then, looking forward to next year. We can discuss the strategic planning kickoff.
So, last meeting, the board selected sensitive community progress to our strategic planning process, and staff had a kickoff meeting on Tuesday, this Tuesday. Talked about, just got to talk through the scope. They had mentioned briefly in their proposal, because of what they heard during the question and answer session, to provide if we wanted an additional service where they're engaging with city residents as part of it, would be part of the strategic plan directly, but that type of engagement to kind of initiate it. Like they said, that can be factored into their process. But we certainly appreciate that. That's not, we're not at that stage yet, but we need to circle back. So we talked through the scope. There will be bi-weekly meetings. At that time, the team, their first step, obviously, data. Like to engage with the board to make sure that they're on the right track. And then next up would be a site visit. They are hoping for the end of April. So they're going to send us some dates that in the proposal itself, they had anticipated a start date in January with a completed process in August. They are still sticking with that completed process in August, but we had a start date. So there are 3 members of the team, one of which is an associate's. She's in as the Center for Community Progress has their National Land Bank Network is now based in DC as opposed to the Michigan offices. And they also have Art and Liz, who will be our points of contact, are located at Bennington, Buffalo, respectively. So we'll have the opportunity for some more direct engagement.
So the site visit is them actually coming.
Coming and talking to council, reps and some tours, some engagement with other stakeholders outside of meeting as well.
What happened to, remember from their response, that portion was going to be truncated and we had wanted it to be extended? Where did that conversation come up?
So we are still at the day and a half.
Okay.
Because as yet, we don't know what we'll need when, and whether we'll, if we're able to get all of the that we need to in that time period, it would seem that that would be adequate. I think I thought the issue was that they would be visiting, the idea that perhaps they'd be visiting sites, but I don't know how essential that would be. But if there is a concern, once we have a tentative schedule for the visit, we can certainly reach out and see if if we can extend it.
Okay, yeah, I personally would be in favor of more time with them, the better from the board perspective, because when we talk about strategic planning, that should be an interactive process where we're kind of playing off each other as opposed to just them doing something and then giving us something. So as much time as we can get with them, be beneficial for us and for them.
I think they do have that in mind. I don't think I think their anticipation was that there would be interaction with the board via, electronic meeting, because they did ask for that. That's the step after they're able to get the data that they requested.
So it's doing a meeting or something like
Yeah.
that. Okay.
So they're officially under contract now, officially kicked off. They're not under.
No.
Okay. And that
There's
meeting-
contract negotiations happening.
Okay.
It's not really the negotiation, but they're making sure that everybody's covered within the contract.
Okay.
And so when it gets back. The contract, they can have it well. It's exciting.
New York Land Bank Association. Like this.
I will not convince Jeff. With anything. But the land bank, they're very active at the state level, and our former president of the State Land Bank Association is now the governor's office. So there's been a lot of discussion around the type of activities that not necessarily support the land bank directly, but that are included in the budget that would support housing. So I'm going to run through what I understand this year's priorities to be. The first is an additional ask to add $25 million in funding to this year's budget for land banks. That is, we received 40 million in capital funding last year, 10 million from aid to localities last year, and 10 million in aid to localities the previous year. But that first year was the 50 million. That funding is the most flexible
but the majority of funding from last year came from capital. So there's an ask for that 25 million to again come from the ATO campus budget. And that's broadly. There's an ask for clarity in the language related to the new Article 11 guidelines for valuing properties. We are not Article 11 in our jurisdiction, so there. There is a zombie law amendment that would be beneficial for us on code enforcement and text for code process where it provides for the additional sharing of information in municipality for enforcement failure to report on abandoned or vacant properties, enforcement against those owners who do not report when the properties are. And then when you're not. When they don't notify the municipality. That they're vacant. Yeah. Oh, vacant registry. There's supposedly one, but there's enforcement. Just,
Right.
so, but that's, thing that supports.
Yeah,
Yes, then there is support for the governor's proposal to increase the income cap for tax credit for commercial properties and for the historic tax credit to those with incomes of up to 120% of AMI rather than just 100%. They think that will definitely additionally benefit downtown areas where there are historic properties. There is also a governor's proposal to base property taxes for owner income, low income housing, so affordable housing for owner occupied affordable housing on the actual sales price, which has probably less impact here than it does in some other areas. But not based it on the necessarily the assessed value when properties are being sold by landlords at a significantly discounted cost. We're not there yet. But. And there is a bill that would authorize cities and towns to establish a community housing fund based on their real estate transfer tax. So if the population of the municipality is less than 1 million, the real estate transfer tax could be used to establish a housing fund that could support affordable housing in those areas. That's
Yeah, oh, that's great, that's consistent.
and that there is continuing the explicit inclusion of land banks in the local retirement system. It never gets anywhere, but the assumption is that they're already included, but it's just. It makes it difficult in some municipalities, so there is that aspect. So that's what they've asked us to bring to our representatives.
I have a question. The first one, 25 million. So are they suggesting that come in any shape or form or specifically? Because we've talked before about trying to build land banks more structurally into the annual state budget process instead of just like one shot funds. So is this just more LDI? What do they?
So this is the budget process, right? So since the initial funding in I guess it's 20 what budget year it was, but we got the money 23. It's been part of the aid to locality. So it was 50 million, and then it was 10 million, then it was 10 million. But there was an additional boost from the capital fund. So that is going to be, all of it has gone through HCR. So it's all being administered through that office in HCR. This funding would be that, again, that flexible funding that could be used for operational activities as well as the project activities. Capital funds generally need to go to capital activities, so rehab and, you know, acquisitions, those types of activities with the potential for up to 5% to support the operations that directly support these activities. But the aid to localities funding can be used more flexibly, but all of it is going through HCR.
And the expectation is that this will be a regular thing that we can rely on year over year and not just hoping that the latest and greatest legislature passes something that supports land banks.
They are hoping for that every year, and the more years that it happens every year, the less likely that it goes away, so they're advocating hard. That we're not out of funding, but they definitely don't want to lose it. So nothing is automatic, but if it looks like this is how we do this. I had a conversation with Crystal this morning. And they do have, you know, not all the funding is been described, and they think that if this does not, if they don't get additional funding for this year, not necessarily this amount, but if it doesn't come through aid to localities, we're going to prioritize the current funds being made available for operational funds, which then, you know, then we need to keep that in mind as we're going forward looking for operational. I'm sorry, looking for project support, because they're going to hold back some of those funds to make sure that there's operational support. But they did, you know, obviously there are other areas that have been, you know, responding. Block my blog, there's, you know, but in some places, there's other state funding for the actual work. It's just it's not as much of a sure thing as but they're going to prioritize operational support for members.
Stuff we can support there. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
88 Rosemary.
It's almost there.
You think within the month or?
Oh, yeah. It'll be done by next week, probably.
Okay, so are we planning some type of celebratory event?
Some type. There's what we did have a meeting with city communications on that it felt required, we need more clarity on what actually we're trying to do. Don't want to misconstrue the regular work. Going forward, don't think that. Better. Offering it. Want to make sure the how wide.
Quietly so.
Well, I don't think so.
Okay, so that's
I
what,
just, but we don't know. So
We have had a meeting with
Okay.
Barbara. And we have not reached a resolution.
Gotcha.
But we will certainly bring that to the board when
Well, they want to know what we're
trying to come up. Yeah,
leveraging this, so, and that's what's kind of hazy there.
yeah, and it's not, this is what we do, because it's not, that's not.
Yeah, they just want to make sure that the messaging is clear that this is a one-time event, for lack of a better way to say it. This is a one-time thing. We've done extensive rehab in this home. We're offering it acknowledgement. The last several years of some of the land bank's work. But yeah, they said, no matter what you say, people are gonna look at it and go, hey, where's the next land bank? Fully finished house that we can buy. So want to make sure that that messaging is clear, minimize the amount of miscommunication. There's going to be some. You know, somebody's gonna look at it and go, how about the next one? There's not gonna be a next one, probably. Another 10 years. So they're working on how they want to frame that message.
But I know too that we did the Madison Street properties, so it was in another program, of course, and so we were acknowledging that. And then the other, the last Madison property, there was kind of a big deal about that, and, you know, we had an event. So this is one of the ones where it's, where we're going as it relates to homeownership. And this would have been like the first big homeownership property that we completed. So, but getting the messaging correct.
Well, yes, and I think, if we, that's a helpful angle that maybe the communications committee could bring to communications office.
That's what I know we hear all the time. How many of you have this going on? That's where we're.
But anything else? Would be good for the board.
Give the board a brief update on 1090 Culver Road. Cobblestone House. Known as the Cobblestone House, you all know. So the land bank does have title to that property now. Again, just to give you a brief background, that was, originally slated for privately owned home slated for demolition. Some members of the community and 1 or 2 members of council were pretty interested in not having that house torn down. City heard those concerns. The mayor asked the land bank to step in and try to assist, and we're happy to help out. So we now have title to the property. The subdivision mapping is all done so that it's part of one parcel with a strip plaza right next to it. So it's being subdivided so that the house is separate from the strip plaza and is donated to the land bank, and we have title to it now. City's going to assist with some pre-sale activities. So for the folks who do and don't know, is that property's been vacant for over a decade. And the property owner just really has kind of let it go in somewhat a bit of a neglect situation. Was not properly secured, multiple openings in the home were there, so there's a lot of bird and animal infestation inside. We don't know about the structural stability of the home being open to the elements for as long as it was. So structural analysis is going to be done first to make sure that structurally it's safe to enter. Once that occurs and we get the green light, there will be a rash of activities that will go on, including cleaning the home out. There's quite a bit of personal property still in there, as well as a lot of animal waste. Bird waste known as guano, toxic, very toxic to human lungs, that has to get pulled out of there. Then the house will be properly secured. To prevent further infestation, there will be exterminators who will remove all the animals who've taken shelter in there. Neighbors will tell you a wide variety of animals they've seen in and around that house. So we'll get that house all secured. We'll have it scoped for its legal use. It will be appraised based on that and then put out for our.
What if the structural report comes back that there's significant structural issues?
If
we
that
have a
does
plan for
happen, and
that.
it's possible, we will need to then reevaluate where we are. We'll probably need to get an OPC the probable cost. What will it take to show the building up? Fancy word for that, right? And then we'll have to evaluate that to see how much money do we want to put in this houses? Are we exceeding the likely value of the structure? If it's a relatively minor cost, if it's, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, we can probably go forward and get that done. If it's something much worse than that, then it's a much larger discussion that the process may stop right there. If it is determined that is at the end of its economic and effective life, then demolition is gonna be the recommendation. But we'll get to there when we get there. Let's hope it's not, and that any damage is reasonable for us to incur or to have a buyer.
We got to that point, could not also solicit other partners, like an art society or somebody, they want to take on the project at that point.
We can always ask them. They never seem to have resources to do it. They just like to support it and give technical support. But as far as financial resources, it's not something that they have come to the table with in the past.
Or we go public and say, hey, this is the last house on the city, anybody want to be part of this?
That could be a path.
And opposed to just demoing.
That could certainly be a path that we put out there. So it's at some point, pass the pencil off for somebody to do it. So that could also require an infusion of public dollars to help somebody. And again, that's a conversation we'd have to have if we want to see that structurally. We don't want the house to come down. But at some point, every structure reaches the end of its life. This one may have, accelerated it by being as vacant as long as it was. But we'll I don't want to jump ahead of it. Let's see what the engineers say.
And we did get confirmation that it's truly a historic building, or it's a landmark property or whatever they were saying at one point.
It's not on any.
It's not on any list according to our zoning office. And it may or may not be eligible for that, and there's advantages and disadvantages to it being listed.
Mhm.
So any potential buyer would probably need to weigh the pros and the cons of each. Because there's more restriction when it's on a list, sometimes there's more restrictions, but there's some funding available.
Yeah,
And if it's not on the list, then there's no restrictions, but there's also no public works. They could go with the bad either way.
I think I speak for everyone when I say that we hope that it is in good shape, salvageable, and gets into the hands of somebody who can do something very nice.
Yes, we'd all agree.
Yep. That'd be a good day.
Agreed.
All right, any other thoughts, comments, questions to go to the board? If not, we have a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded, all in favor? See that? Thank you. Have a good day.